You have just watched an extraordinary film, American Masters, No Direction Home, Bob Dylan. It's a story of a genius and also a capsule of American culture. Joining me now is its acclaimed director, the man who made this film, Martin Scorsese. Congratulations, first of all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, to have this material,
well,
and to weave this story.
Yeah. It was so tempting, despite trying to finish Gangs of New York and doing pre-production on Aviator and then shooting Aviator and doing the post-production on Aviator, I could not help but get involved with the amount of the extraordinary footage that they had in their archives. And
some of it never seen before.
Never seen before. A lot of it never seen before, and shot by some great filmmakers. I mean, D.A. Pennebaker shooting that entire 1966 tour in color on stage and backstage. Murray Lerner's footage from Newport festivals. There's so much that was there. The video press conferences on Kinescope and Steve Allen show, so much stuff that it was so tempting, and I just found myself agreeing to. At first, I was asked to just help put some of this together into some sort of form.
Yes.
You know, no release date.
Yeah, exactly.
Take your time.
Shape it for us, Marty.
Shape it for us. And I saw some. My old friend Jay Cox put us together, Jeff Rosen and I, and so. Worked with a wonderful editor named David Tedeschi, who worked on the Blues series that we did for PBS. And David and myself and Margaret Bodie, we were just, Jeff Rosen, we you know, actually smaller than a room on the side of my office, and we were doing Aviator or whatever was in this other big area, and he was in there with his computer and a big screen, and ultimately, I think it took about 3.5 years, but ultimately we finished it during the shooting of Departed, which I was shooting in Boston. Most of it in Boston, and in any event, it's stuff that I couldn't. There's no way. I just with music, it gets to be. Music is so important to me. It's inspiring in the sense that it inspires movement, images, mood. And that's why I always feel like cinema is so close to music, because of where the camera moves and the editing and that sort of thing. So any music I listen to, particularly rock music or music of the period. It's a never-ending source of inspiration. So I keep going back, and it becomes something that is it's uncontrollable. I have to sort of make these films on musical
Music draws
themes.
you back.
Yeah, it just draws me back.
This is a man who wrote the #1 rock and roll song of our time, like a Rolling Stone. This is a man who has probably been covered more as a songwriter
I would think so, yeah.
than anybody.
Yeah.
This is a man from folk to rock and roll to suddenly reaching out to say, just when you think I'm here,
I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, you know, that was the issue. The footage that we had access to, which was understood that we'd finished the story in 1966 when he had this motorcycle accident. And I said, that's fine, because that gives us a certain limitation. But what was interesting was to find the narrative in the footage and in his life. And I think the narrative came out of, first, in my own mind, somehow to use 1966, all the footage of Pennebaker and Howard Hawk, wherever was shooting that stuff, to literally use that as the present, and then take that and go back in time, and ultimately in part 2 for the movie to catch up with itself somehow. Climactic sequence at the Newport Folk Festival 1965, in which there was the confrontation and the difficulties with that. And in the process,
when he was actually going out in a new direction,
totally new direction, with the electric backup, which, by the way, I never heard Bob Dylan before like a Rolling Stone. I come from, the Lower East Side. We were, Italian Americans who were listening to top 40 radio. We heard some folk music via, I guess, I would think, Albert Grossman and some others, in the form of Peter, Paul, and Mary and other people at the time that was making folk music acceptable to reach the mass audiences, making it commercial. And that's how I heard that. I never really heard the folk music of Dylan. Never heard his albums before I heard Rolling Stone. And there was, of course, something about the lyrics and a power to the lyrics, and the way the words are phrased, and the nature of his voice, that ultimately, I'd say it's one never tires of that particular piece of music. You don't tire of it.
Yeah, I mean, to have this material is like somebody writing a biography, and the family comes to you and says, he wrote all these letters.
Yeah, I know.
They're yours. Look at them and shape them.
I know, and shape them.
Tell us what they mean.
Yeah.
When you finished this, did your impression of him change or simply grow?
I think a number of things. First of all, it grew. There's no doubt about that. I was never one of those people who tried to figure out what he was doing.
Yeah.
I just sort of went along with it.
Let it speak to me.
Yeah, let it talk to me. If I like it, I'm going there. You know. I did not shoot the interview. It was done by Jeff Rosen, who's a close associate of his for 26 years.
10 hours of interviews.
10 hours of interviews. I saw the 10 hours. And this is great. I said, maybe not necessarily sometimes what he says, but it's in his eyes.
Yeah.
It's in his eyes. You see things going on in the back of his head and how and the words that are chosen to describe what he's feeling is fascinating to me. So that, you know, ultimately what I think is interesting for any young person seeing the film is the development of an artist and the choice that he makes, which is the tougher choice, which is to go on your own and to keep seeing if you could pull anything further out of yourself in later stages of your development, and to you know, they got the commercial element now, and I think that's so important for young people now to see a picture like this because of the hope and the inspiration it would give them to stay on their own road. Don't get sucked in by the nature of so many things that are going on today. Which Bobby Newirth says it in the film, where he says, and in those days, he said, things were different. They were not dollar driven. You were willing to say if you had anything to say. And they said we would go see Ornette Coleman. He said, "Did you see Ornette Coleman? Did he have anything to say?" Yeah. Well, that's the way I hope young people take this picture and go their own road.
It says something that he has been so strong, even though there've been fallows, you know, that he is still such a dominant presence in the mind of so many people who love music.
Yeah, and I think it's because of this the timelessness of the music. Izzy Young says it in the film. He says he wrote music that spoke to us today of how we felt politically, or also how we felt emotionally, psychologically. That was timeless. He said it was written for today, but also it sounded as if it could have been written 200 years ago.
And applied to tomorrow.
And applied to tomorrow, exactly. So it's timeless.
Yeah. You know genius. You love Fellini. Genius.
Yes.
You looked at the blues, and you are as bigger student of film than anyone I know. Tell me what genius is about. I mean, how do we understand someone like Dylan?
Well, I think it goes back to the point of expressing what you want to express and having the command of the medium in which you're working, and in a way takes over you, and you can't help it. Yeah. You can't help it. You've got to go there. Yeah. They may not join you. People may not come with you, but you're going to go. And whether it's a filmmaker, a novelist, a poet, he was going. He was going,
and he understood that it was going to turn a lot of people off.
Yes, I think so. I don't know if he understood. Apparently, from the footage that I saw and worked with, I don't know if he understood to that extent. Yeah. But I think he understood that night when he only stayed on stage 15 minutes. As I said, the headliners were playing an hour. Yeah. So, but he continued, and it's really, you have to understand, it's something. A performer, a poet, musician, performer goes on stage, and people are booing and throwing things at you. That's you personally. You're not hiding behind a film camera or, you know, on TV. No, you're up there, and it's every night.
You can't say it's the director's fault. It's me.
You can't say the actor put that. Yeah, no, it's me, my song, and me personally standing here and how I'm putting it on. And then they kept going on. It kind of gave them a something. It just put him on the right and made him more. Gave him more conviction of his own work.
I said, and have made note of the fact that you've made other documentaries. You know. Is it a different form for you as a creator, in a sense that it gives you real material to work with? And here you had a voluminous amount of material for that the American Masters people put together. But how is it different for a creative artist to take material like this that's real versus take actors, as you have done in The Aviator and the new film? And so
documentaries have always been a kind of in a way, as far as film, is almost like its original form. Camera, once you put a camera in a quote real situation, unquote, it doesn't become a real. It's no longer a real situation. But you do have elements within what they shoot to see a person's body language, to see a person move. So what I'm saying is that ultimately the truth that somehow I still retain from watching some great documentaries or watch documentaries on television very often, there's a certain truth that comes out, whether it's emotional, political, whatever. There's a drama that's occurring in that documentary that I've always been trying to accomplish in my narrative films.
A drama.
A drama.
And you find
human
it in the
drama.
Yeah.
And I find it, and I find that I'm always drawn to doing these documentaries. A lot of it has to do with music, but I think one of the first ones I did was on my mother and father, and I found back in 1974, and I think Italian American, and I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot about.
What did you learn?
Well, the position of a person in the frame. The camera doesn't have to fly around and go up and down it. If the person is telling you something interesting enough, and if they're engaging enough, you could travel with them. They could take you to, they could take you to worlds you didn't know. And it's almost sometimes, literally, a great film can be a person just talking.
Yeah. Well, when Dylan starts playing off words, the three words he sees, it's extraordinary.
Oh, I know.
I mean, you just mesmerized by standing out in the street, doing that.
The sign and the I want my dog bathe and animal my bird and just mixing up the words. But you also get the joy of working with words. The joy of a poet working with words, the exuberance of it, and especially one at his height, in a way. It's quite a good piece of footage.
When I say that, how do you see that?
I think somehow it was the confluence of all these elements together at that time, and the way he changed from the earlier music, which was emulating Woody Guthrie and Rambling Jack Elliott, all these other people together.
Guthrie was his first hero.
Guthrie was his first hero, yeah. But to wind up writing Blowing in the Wind and God Is on Our Side and all these, Medgar Evers, Pawn in the Game, all these things somehow hit at the right time. And he expressed it. What other people wanted to say and couldn't say, other people wrote about and nobody read. Yeah. He expressed it in a form that was very, very moving and beautifully written. Yeah,
when Allen Ginsberg first heard him, he said, I knew. Yeah. I knew to something else.
Ginsberg was most eloquent in this wonderful interview that was done 10 years ago. And very moving, especially when it's hard for him to describe what he felt when he heard. He said, I think it was Hard Rain. He said, he said, then I knew the torch had been passed for the beat poets to a new generation.
That's changing culture right there.
Changing culture, but it's taking it and going on. It's going, in a sense, it's going out to the mass culture, you see. And then he went one step further, which is the electric move, which brought it even to a bigger audience. I would never heard him if he hadn't gone electric. A lot of people wouldn't have heard him. So that brought us back to the earlier music, and then brought us back to his influences, and you go on and on and on like that.
Anything about him that you would like to know more about? I mean, there's always the fascination with the relationships. There's always a fascination with his own sense of how he sees himself. Because I saw a quote in which he said, an artist has to be careful to never think that he's arrived somewhere. He has to be in a constant state of becoming.
Yeah, and therefore is the dilemma and the problem and the struggle. Yeah, you really do have to be that way. And I think that's that's one of the most important things for younger people seeing this film, besides setting with him within the context of the times, too. Looking at the JFK footage again, the assassination, in a new way. I tried to, with my editor, David Tedeschi, I told him, I said, we've seen that footage. We've seen so much young people have seen the assassination footage of JFK for so long. I said, we've got to find a new way of presenting it. And so we came up with these ideas of fracturing it. And then I said, ultimately, we have to concentrate on the effect it had on the people there at that moment, the emotion of the men and the women and the children all crying. I said, that's what it's about. That makes it new, I said, in a fresh way for an audience of today to see that, because it's real.
It really is that. I mean, go ahead.
Anyway, you were saying, I mixed
I was going to say that actually reminds me of a story of Henri Cartier-Bresson, who, when Churchill's was coming down the Thames, all the photographers were focused on the casket on the boat. And Henri Cartier-Bresson turned around and photographed the people watching, which is what you've done
that's what we try to do.
That's what you do. I mean, as embarrassing as it might be, just help me understand, what does a filmmaker bring to this? What is it that you have done here? If you take the JFK thing, that's clearly the the experience of Marty Scorsese. That's the creativity of Marty Scorsese. That is what we want you to do. Give us this material and show it to us in a way that speaks to us differently.
I think what we found, and it was a struggle, it took a long time, we found a narrative about the journey of the artist and about having conviction in how the muse strikes you to go in that direction. And I think this is the ultimate thing throughout the entire picture, and this is what kept us going. And also, finally, that the artist, in many cases, artists, writers, in any form, need a certain amount of audience appreciation.
Yeah.
And then, because of what happened at the time and all the different elements together, it becomes too much. So ultimately, there's the burnout. There is the burnout. You reach that. You reach that level where you can't go on anymore. Some people never go on. Some people die. Others come back. But when they do come back, is there any more to pull from? Is there any more in you? Can you create?
Well, I see no evidence that Marty Scorsese is reaching the burnout point. You've just made a movie that people, not only this, but also the feature that you've been working on. People say it's one of the best things you've ever done. But there is something about people, and Dylan is that way as well, who have the capacity to constantly find new energy.
Yeah, this is the key as you get older, to find new ways new things you want to say. You know, and how are you going to say it? I said it this way before. Well, that might be okay if you take half of it, but what if I go this way and go left and right in this turn? And I think that's the whole thing. People talk about certain filmmakers. They only made a certain amount, 5 good films, and they lasted 10 years of work. Or a certain novelist. The first 3 novels are fantastic, and then maybe there's a third one back there. But you know, that sort of thing. But it's interesting to see the journey of a writer. You take, I always use the example of Melville, reading from, if you read Moby Dick first, well, go back and read Taipei and Omu and Mardi, and then you go all the way through and you wind up with the Confidence Man. Then you try to hit Clarel, the long poem. I mean, I mean, you see where he went. You know, you see the out into the edges, out into the end of the universe in terms of the style of writing and the stories he was telling, or what he was expressing about being human. Interesting to see, and also inspiring to know that there was still more to pull from, even when people totally rejected him. I'm not comparing Dylan, Melville. What I'm saying is that in every art form, I think there is a certain amount of a point where someone does reach the level where you get to the situation and say, I don't have any more to say. Yeah. You know, because if you're making movies, you don't have anything more to say. That's a pretty tough job. To go on the set every day, deal with the issues, deal with the studio, deal with the public.
It's hard enough as it is. If you have nothing,
you don't do it then. Go away. Just get another job, you know. But somehow you keep thinking you got it. You go back out there, keep swinging. It's like a round in a prize fight. I think that's what he is so inspiring.
He must still have that because he's still out there performing. He's not sitting in some room writing songs. I know. He's performing. And he continues to want to do it. Having lived the life that he's done, knowing he is the icon that he is. Now, we stop in 66, right? 66. Yes. You know, when the accident happened. Yes. Is there more material that's just waiting for your hands or somebody else's hands?
I honestly don't know. I guess Jeff would know. Jeff Rosen would know. He's got more material there. It would be very interesting to see, because there's another journey that happens. It really does. Different he reached, or areas or avenues he went, in a way, pull back, religious issues, lots of different things that happen there, and as a development of a person trying to, as he says, go home, which no one can ever do.
Tell me about the title.
No Direction Home is, of course, from the song, Like a Rolling Stone. You know, how does it feel to be on your own? No direction home, like a rolling stone. And I felt that it was very poignant when I saw the interview, and he said, I've been just trying to get home. And he's never going to get there. We'll get to another home. You know, anybody on that journey trying to get home, you just can't do it. But you'd be damned, you're going to really try. You're going to try. Maybe home's another place, you know, and that's what it is. And you're creating it as you go. It's in the process, obviously. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was really interesting, trying to get home. Well, that gives you enough drive for the whole life, hopefully, because when you finally die, then you're home.
And he has miles and miles to go. We hope. I thank you for sharing these insights with us. Marty Scorsese has made this remarkable film based on these 10 hours of interviews, which you have just seen. Marty's insight into a man who somehow, all these years, from Minnesota to Greenwich Village to Britain, has shaped the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about the world. And who better to do that than one of America's most gifted filmmakers? And to be presented with material like this was a rare opportunity for all of us to benefit. For American Matt, please.
We are PBS.